Okay, so hello and welcome to this Being a Film and Animation Student webinar. My name is Chris and I work at the University of Chichester for the Student Recruitment and Outreach team. And I'm going to be hosting this session today and taking you through some kind of conversational questions with two of our students, or one of our students, sorry, and one of our recent graduates. So I will get them to introduce themselves. So firstly, we've got Steve.
Hello, my name is Steve, and I'm a second year audio production and music technology student.
Thanks, Steve. And then I've also got Tom here as well.
Hello, I'm Tom, and I'm a recent graduate. So I graduated last summer from Media and Communications.
Thanks very much, guys. So we're going to work our way through a series of different questions that we've got to give you a bit more information on being a student at the University of Chichester, and hopefully that may fill you in with a lot of information. But if you do also have any questions that come up throughout, then we'll give you some contacts at the end so you can get those questions answered, and that will come in the form of emails and kind of social media channels and bits and pieces. So first things first, you'll see on the screen now, this is all the different kind of areas of course that we offer within our creative industries department. And we have everything from digital film production through to commercial music, games design and esports down there as well. And you'll have already heard Steve talk about his audio production course and also Tom talk about the media and communications course. Hopefully these are all the different courses that you've applied for. And you'll also find that some of these have some kind of joint modules or joint courses as well that you may well have applied for. If you want to find out any more information about your specific courses or the modules and the syllabuses, you can check out the website there, chi.ac.uk/courses, and that will give you much more information and also some department level contact should you have any specific questions. The information that we're going to cover today is more about student life and more about that kind of hands-on experience and that actually living at university experience. So it is more course level information, and you can contact those different people via the website. So first things first, I'm going to start with a couple of questions about those first steps before you got to university. So what did you do before joining the university? I'm going to come to Steve first. I'm going to ask you a bit about what steps did you take before you joined the university?
Yeah, so the steps I took were, it's an unorthodox method of approach, but I watched a lot of vlogs concerning the University of Chichester, people who are moving in, the environment, the surrounding area, the beach, and travel vlogs, basically how to get there and what fun things to do, because I really kept in touch with everything, with the courses and whatnot, and I just wanted to find out about how to get myself in the mood, especially as an international student, of traveling, settling down. Yeah.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, and importantly there, you mentioned that you are an international student, so that's, yeah, really good. Vlogs and blogs, interesting. And then second question there, then I'll come to you, Tom, and I know it's a little bit further back for you, having been a graduate, but how did you feel initially about going to university? Were there certain feelings that came up for you?
Yeah, I just remember being, because where I had taken some time out of education, I was like 20, by the time I started my degree, I was like 24. And so I was a bit nervous thinking, or like assuming that everyone else on my degree would be like straight out of A levels, so like 18, 19. But and so that did make me a little bit anxious, thinking I'd sort of like stick out like a sore thumb being the only like mid-20s person. But I was actually pleasantly surprised that by the time I started, I realised that everyone, like, yeah, most people are from like coming from A levels straight away, but it's also quite a mix of different ages and backgrounds. So it actually wasn't, ended up not really being something I should have worried about too much. Yeah, and also what helped was going to like applicant days and visit days, getting a bit more of a feel for what the course is like and what the campuses are like. And so that really helped me feel a little less nervous about that side of things heading into it. Yeah, I was also just really excited as well, because where I'd taken some time out, doing like working in retail this sort of like felt like the next sort of like big step. So it was a mix of like being a bit anxious, but also just really excited as well.
Thanks, Tom. That's really cool.
That's right.
Coming back to you, Steve, just to kind of pick up on your being an international student. Did you have access to similar things like applicant days or open days? Did you attend any applicant days or open days? How did that work out for you?
It was hard because I personally didn't attend any applicant days or open days, especially over COVID, because that's when I enrolled. So there's not much of that. But what I said I did, and what international students do, is like they just kept on checking the websites for information, all the webinars just like these, the videos, the campus tours. That's what helps, and like gives you an idea of how university is going to be and gets you in that mood.
Brilliant. Thank you. That links us probably quite nicely onto some of the things that we class as kind of some of the top tips before you attend in September. So obviously you've already had things like open days, and those have been kind of come and gone, but there are going to be some we have got one coming up on the 2nd of July, so there is that other chance for you to visit campus. If you do wish to still come, then obviously we would love to see you on that day. There will be kind of a whole host of different things happening, and there will also be students who are thinking next year, but equally there will be students who are obviously coming this year. One of the things that you've talked about as well was the applicant days, taster sessions, webinars. We do host a lot of different sessions that we like to offer to give students that feel, to give students that experience, and also to get them in the mood for coming in September. Something that's really important, and I think something that you've both kind of echoed, is that visiting the local area and getting to know what's around, what sort of things there are on offer. You are going to be studying and living in an area potentially that's not your immediate home area for up to 3 years, if not more. Something that we've been told before as well from some of our students who commute is test running that journey from university to home. Sounds like an odd one, but if you've already got that added stress of getting to university on time, you want to make sure that the traffic's right or the trains are running on time and those sorts of things. So it's always a good thing to have a little bit of a test run. And really importantly, it's those asking questions. You will find you are not the only one with those questions in your head. You never are, and it's really important that you get those answered. So whether that's through some of the social media channels, whether that's through some of the emails that you can find on the website for our admissions team, for our recruitment team, lots and lots of different ones that we will talk about as we come to the end, and we'll share those with you as well. So moving on then to that getting started. So again, you're both a little bit away from that initial first year, but I'm sure you've both got very different experiences of your first week at university. So Tom, I'll come to you first this time. What was your first week at university like? Can you give us an idea on the sorts of things you got involved in?
Yeah. So first of all, you have Freshers Week, which doesn't have any, or at least I don't think it does have any like teaching time. That sort of like then follows the next week on. So in Freshers Week is when I call the big sort of like first social events of the semester happen, and those are really good opportunities for you to get to know other people from different courses, or if you're in accommodation, those are normally like times where people like have that first like night out and properly start to get to know each other. But then sort of like the first week of teaching is all very introductory. Normally the first sessions are quite almost like hands-off approach, where they might start off with like a icebreaker activity, like something as simple as just everyone goes around saying like their name and like what maybe like a little bit of their background, just to start getting to know each other. And so yeah, it's all the very first week or first few weeks are all quite nice in that you're not thrown into the deep end straight away. It all builds up, and so yeah, it's quite a nice way to start off, especially if some people have sort of like been feeling a bit nervous beforehand. Yeah, you sort of like get to start building up quite slowly before anything, to like you're not diving straight into assessments or anything like that. Those are all later on in the semester. So yeah, the first week's quite easy going, to be honest.
Brilliant, thanks, Tom. Steve, was there anything that you did in your first week you think was kind of still sticks out in your mind, or activities you got involved in?
Yeah, just as Tom said, get involved in Freshers Week. That's a place where you can meet all the societies, handball, football, rugby, even anime, and people who love video games. Yeah, so you can join any society. I personally joined football and play for the university, and I've been in the same team all the way second year now, going into third year. So yeah, just getting involved in the Freshers Week, finding something you love doing, your niche, and finding like-minded people like you.
Excellent, excellent, thank you. How did you find, so Stephen, from an international perspective, how did you find settling into student life?
It was quite easy, I may say, because even before I got into the country, I already knew who my flatmates were. I already knew the people in my accommodation, the people in my course, because you have there's usually a Facebook group with all the students and another Facebook group for people in your accommodation. So you already know. I even tell them like, cause I was a week late, and everyone basically knew. So when I got into my accommodation, I'm seeing people waving at me from their windows.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's brilliant, thank you. And Tom, you were a bit different. You didn't live in accommodation, did you? So how did you find settling in the first week?
Yeah, so it was really different for me, sort of, because I've lived in Bognor all my life. So Bognor campus, like, it was just really simple for me to still live at home. And so for me, I think the main thing was sort of, especially where I'd been away from education for a while, it was sort of like getting back into like the assessments and the work side of things. That was probably the bit that took the longest, but what's good is that first year you get quite a lot of sort of assistance from your academics, and so even especially if like you haven't written an essay for quite a long time, they give you quite a lot of help in sort of like building those skills back up. And then as Stephen mentioned about societies, I did join film society because I'm like quite into films and media, that sort of thing, and so that was another way that I sort of like made or got to know some people from the university, sort of like outside of my degree, and so yeah, it was quite there's a lot of different ways to sort of like get to know people and make friends, so yeah, it was quite nice in that way. Sort of you weren't sort of limited to who you were getting to know or who you were interacting with.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah.
So moving on then. I mean, this is probably as long as a piece of string is for different courses, but this is last year 2 examples of 2 students kind of typical timetables, but I'm sure you guys had very different timetables. Can you give just kind of a very quick overview of like roughly what days you were in and what days you were potentially free to do other things? Tom, do you want to go first?
Yeah. So for me, it was sort of like different each semester. You get a different timetable each semester, and so and plus where different degrees do different modules and they're sort of like structured differently. I think for me, the average session was about 2 hours, and where media and communications is the most theory-based degree in the department, that meant most sessions were sort of like an hour doing a lecture, having a little break for like 5 or 10 minutes, and then the rest of it would be a seminar, so sort of like more group, more of a group-based discussion. And then it was different again in third year doing my independent project or dissertation, where that's obviously like completely independent. You get tutorials with your advisor because everyone gets like allocated like a tutor for the dissertation, but that even though that did have like a timetabled slot, it was where it was independent. It was sort of like just completely up to you how you approached that. But yeah, sort of like more often than not, the sessions would be 2 hours, and sort of like I think at most I was in 4 days, just where the timetabling sort of like ended up scheduling them. But I think I did have one semester in 1 year where I think 3 out of my 4 modules ended up being on the same day. So I ended up with one really long day and then a second day in the week that was only for like one module. So yeah, it kind of depends on how the timetabling ends up, but yeah.
But definitely time to explore other things and work outside, so that's cool. And Steve, how about you for your timetable probably in the most recent year might be useful?
Yeah, so my timetable is we're in 3 times a week, but we have about 3 to 4 hour sessions. So let's say we have a lecture on Monday, it'll be like about 3 to 4 hours, and then Tuesday and Thursday, Wednesdays and Fridays are usually left free because students usually participate in sports activities versus other universities on Wednesday. So it's very hard to get everyone in class together on Wednesday. So yeah, that's the rough timetable we have.
Brilliant. And then outside of that, were you allowed to use the equipment that you were using? Were you allowed to use the studios, those sorts of things as well?
Yes, there's a booking platform online. You can book what time you want to use the studio or the facilities or equipment, and the technicians will get back to you, giving you a booking confirmation. You can even book a place all the way up until midnight.
Oh wow, okay, that's quite impressive. I didn't realise it was quite that late, but fantastic, brilliant. Thank you, guys. So moving on then. So something that I think you mentioned the Facebook group, and our Facebook group has been going for a few years now, and we renew it each year, and we'll give some details at the end. But some of the concerns that come out of that are obviously some of the ones you can see on screen there. People think about exams and assessment methods and what support there's offered. Were there any particular ones you think that you had that aren't necessarily highlighted on there? Steve, do you want to? I'll let you go first.
Yeah, in terms of exams, people are always thinking about exams, sitting down, pen and paper, or just answering questions on the test. Yeah, the thing about it is it's much more free than that. You can have a practical exam, just easy, like the lecturer watching your process, how you're working, and that will be basically the whole exam. And it's not as such as a high pressure situation because they're there to support you, even though it's exam conditions.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah, so I think people will have that word at the exam from school and they go straight into panic mode. They're going to be in rows and rows of seats in a big hall, and it's obviously at university it's very different. Tom, how about you? Were there any things that you would say were your kind of top concerns before you came to university?
So I think my concerns were sort of like the ones on the screen, or sort of like quite related to those. So I remember, even though I'm quite interested in filmmaking or like practical side of things, where I also knew that media was like the most theory based, I was a bit unsure how if I happened to do like a practical module in one semester, I was a bit worried about like, would they sort of expect everyone to sort of be like a genius on the camera or something like that. But for media and like the film production degrees, in the first semester or first year, you do a module called Practice Toolkit, or it might be slightly different now, but when I did it was called Practice Toolkit, and it was sort of like an introductory module where everyone works in a group to put together their own trailer, poster, and website for a film idea that they have. And so with that, you sort of get to know how to set up the cameras. You get to know a bit about like the editing software we use and Photoshop. And so, it's it was really helpful because yeah, I was a bit concerned that they might sort of expect everyone to sort of like just like be like an absolute whiz on the camera or like with editing, but no, there's like introductory things in the first year that sort of gives knowledge for everyone to build on, and so yeah, it was quite good. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's quite important, isn't it? I know I talk to groups in schools and events, and people are like, oh, what do I already need to know? Do I need to know any particular kit, equipment, books, software? And it's realizing, isn't it, that everyone's coming from a very different place. You might know something and someone else might know something totally different, so there are those lectures and there are those workshops to get you up to speed as well. So that's good. Thanks, that's really important. So I'm not gonna go through every single question there, but I'll come across to you guys to kind of fill in. Did you? So obviously we know, Tom, you didn't live in accommodation for your first year, but Steve, you did. And kind of how did you feel, or how did you go about making new friends? I know, Steve, you said initially you knew, or you felt like you knew a lot of people before you got here, which is really cool. So was there anything that stood out as you used as a way of making new friends?
Yeah, basically, just having a laugh about talking to people, moving in, telling them, oh, I love doing this, I love playing guitar. I might make noise because I listen to a lot of rock music, and that's basically find people with the same interest just by bantering around like that.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, that's cool. That's really, yeah. I suppose it's about being social, isn't it, and not being afraid to just talk to people. Everyone's in a similar position wherever they've come from. They don't know people, so that's quite cool. Tom, is there anything you would say? I mean, from an aspect of not necessarily living in halls, but still coming into a room full of new people, was there anything you felt like you got involved with, you did differently?
Yeah. So I also had like joined the sort of like freshers or applicant group for the people who are like starting at the same time as me, and so in that I remember, I think I posted like asking like who else was doing media, and so that was a helpful way to sort of even just to like recognize names, so that it wasn't a complete like complete surprise sort of like when we started. And then the joining a society helped as well, because like as I said before, that was a really good way to sort of get to know people outside of my degree, because the societies are open to anyone. They're not like dependent on you being part of a certain course group or certain department. And yeah, so yeah, that was sort of like one of my main worries heading into my degree, but there's so many opportunities to like get to know people either on your course or like on a completely different course to you as well. And so yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you, guys. That's cool. Leads us on to some of the stuff you've touched on kind of already. I think you've both kind of loosely touched on the word that everyone fears: exams, essays, all those sorts of things. And I mean, I regularly tell people in schools, I think with degrees across the country, irrelevant of where you go, you can play to your strengths, and like you say, they're not as horrendous as you feel or your experiences in the past. But Tom, I'll come to you first with your course. What type of assessments did you take in your subject? Were there any particular methods they used?
So yeah, as media and communications is mostly theory, there is a lot of essay writing, but even so, there's still a lot of variety in how some of the assessments are done. Some of them are sort of like more creative portfolios where you're given the word count, and then it's up to you how you sort of use that. Like there's a journalism module I did where it was exactly that where we were all given the word count, and it was up to us like how many pieces of journalistic writing we did, and in sort of like what format as well. And then but I think you could also do some like some essays as video essays instead. So there's still plenty of opportunity to do like something more practical based, if that's sort of like that was someone's particular interest. And especially with the dissertation in the final year, there's a lot of freedom with how you can choose to do that and what subject area you do it on. So for me, I did it just as a sort of standard dissertation, but I chose it on my favorite video game. And so that ended up being a really good way to sort of keep it interesting and sort of like, or at least sort of like, not get too bogged down in sort of like, oh, I've got to do more writing for my dissertation sort of thing. I was always sort of like quite happy to delve into it. But then someone else on my course group did their dissertation as a documentary, and so there was a lot of freedom in how we could format it and structure it. And then there was other like more practical modules as well, where you got to use the camera equipment, use the editing software as well. So yeah, there's a lot. It was sort of like mostly theory and like writing, but there was a lot of opportunity to do other formats for the assessments too.
Brilliant. Steve, coming on to you then, were there any different types of assessment, or are there, any other different types of assessment that you would add into that you've done?
Yeah, even looking over at the presentation, there's a picture of a guy looking at the screen, sitting over a desk. That happens to be my head lecturer for my course. So for some of our assessments, we basically have the same scenario. We're trying to work with something, either music or film or audio, basically audio in film, music, games, and using the equipment to available standard, the industry standard equipment that the university provides. So the lecturers take a step back and watch how we're doing it, if we know everything, and then we can back up our decisions in the practical side while watching us with an essay afterwards, just talking about what we went, what we did. Yeah.
Excellent. So very hands-on, very playing to your strengths and also playing to the strengths and the skills that you'll need eventually to obviously work in the industry that you're working towards. Brilliant, thank you. Leads us nicely onto kind of the things that are on offer as well for students. I won't delve too much into this, but this is something that we do talk about a lot, and we do make sure that students know. But there are a multitude of different supports on offer. Everything from that academic skills, as people were saying at the start, and Tom, you said about not necessarily having to know how to structure an essay and being told and taught how to work and do a bibliography, those sorts of things, right the way through to things like our chaplaincy. We also have a very good support team for things like disability, dyslexia, student health, so everything from physical health right the way through to mental health, you and mind, counselling, those sorts of things, and also student money, which is really important. Again, it's that aspect of how you'll fund your way through university, how you'll budget, all those sorts of things as well. There are people at every step of your journey to obviously be there to support you, as well as you guys have kind of echoed all the way through, is your lecturers and your academics are very open to supporting you with all those different aspects as well. So that's good. Moving on to the next part then, this is kind of some of the questions I always really like to hear as well. So I'll come to you, Steve, first, but has there been a favourite part or a standout memory so far of your course that you think that comes out first?
Yeah, I'll take you back. We had a module called field and location recording. So basically capturing audio out in the field, and then bringing what we captured back into the studios. But that was my favorite part because we ended up working with a variety of cars and sports cars, like a Jaguar XF. We had some electronic cars, some old school cars. So just recording using the university equipment, listening to, I was a petrol head that I am. It was quite exciting, just capturing the sounds of these cars, engines, and probably using them in games or films or even like commercials. Yeah.
Excellent, that sounds brilliant. And Tom, same question then. Is there anything that stands out as one of your top memories from your 3 years?
Yeah, there's quite a few. Like I think the sort of like probably the more recent one is that I'm really proud of like how my dissertation came along, because my final year was quite disrupted with all the COVID stuff. So the first semester I was able to be in the on campus for like face-to-face teaching, but then after Christmas it was back to online learning.
Right.
And so yeah, that was a little bit stressful, but and so I essentially had to write my dissertation from my bedroom. And so that was a bit of a challenge, but yeah, I was really proud of how it all came together. And as I did it on a subject that was a really big interest of mine, it was just quite nice having that sort of like the freedom to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But then earlier in the degree, there's a module in the first year where we were sort of like it was a longer timetabled session, and so the first part of it we would watch a film, and then we'd have like a little break, and then the lecture in the seminar all about like analysing that film and what genre it was, because it was like all about Hollywood filmmaking.
Oh wow!
And so
okay,
it's like it was like a different genre each week of the semester for that module, and so yeah, that was a lot of fun. Sort of like being able to watch a film like at uni, sort of like for the session, and then go not straight into, but like follow it up with like a seminar group discussion. As someone who's really into filmmaking, that was a lot of fun.
Brilliant.
So yeah, those are probably my two favourite bits.
Thanks, Tom.
Right.
Okay, and then very quickly, so have you got particular plans or a particular aspiration to do once you've kind of, or now you've graduated? Tom, to you first.
So at the moment, I am working an internship at the university, and so where my last year of my degree was a bit disrupted, it's been really nice to sort of like keep that link for a little while longer with the university. But then going forwards, further down the line, I would like to either do something media related, particularly I'd like to get into gaming or just journalism in general, sort of gaming journalism.
Excellent.
And I feel like my degree sort of like provided me a good sort of like foundation to build upon for that, with sort of like journalism modules, doing a bit of like blog creation as well. And so yeah, that's what I hope to get into.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah.
And Steve, is there anywhere that you see yourself or something that's an aspiration for you once you graduated?
Yeah, once I graduate, I want to go into sound design for video games and audio programming for video games.
Excellent. So yeah, that's quite an exciting field, and as you've already said, you've obviously done some stuff to do with that. Brilliant, thank you. Coming on to one of our final slides of questions, and what I'll do is I'll give one of these to each of you. So I'll read them out, and then I'll get you guys to answer. So what would you say to someone considering studying here? So Steve, I'll come to you first with that one. So what would you say to someone considering studying here?
I'd say just go for it. As we are a small hands-on university with small class sizes and things like that, you have all the equipment and lecturers with 20 years plus in the knowledge in the field at your feet. As my lecturers always say, the world is your oyster. The uni is your oyster. So just use all the equipment, facilities, get with everything, the societies, because at the end of the day, everything is here for you. And it's up to you to make the most of it.
Thanks, Steve. That's cool. And then Tom, the second question, is there any advice you would give before someone starts their studies? Is there one piece of advice that stands out?
Well, first of all, I'd just like to echo what Stephen was saying, because that was like, yeah, there's so much available at the uni to sort of like use and get to know with the academics and all the equipment available as well. But then for advice, if they haven't already, I'd say like come have a visit day with like either a campus tour or on like an open day, that's a really good way for you to get a feel for what the university is like, especially if you get to visit while it's still like in semester time, so all the students are still sort of around. And then also, if you had like a particular question about the course, you could try, I'd recommend trying to contact someone in the department, or preferably like one of the lecturers from that degree, try and hear from them specifically about the course and like what the course content is like as well. And they'll be there on open days as well. So if someone was able to come to an open day, those are really good opportunities to get to know the university and the lecturers.
Fantastic.
So yeah.
Thanks, Tom. That's brilliant. So I'm going to come to my final slide, but we'll kind of end up on this in a second. So as I've said all the way through, there are different platforms that you can talk to us on. You can talk to students on a multitude of different things, but you can talk to them on UniBuddy, which is chi.ac.uk/chat. And I can tell you, Steve is one of our ambassadors who's on that, so you may well end up chatting to him. And then we've also mentioned quite a few times our undergraduate Facebook group, which you can see there. You can always pause this video and follow that. It will ask you a few questions to join it, just to check you are actually an applicant to the University of Chichester, but it's nice and easy to get onto. And as Steve already said, and as Tom already said, it really does help you to start to know people. You'll meet people, you'll chat to people, you'll probably form your own WhatsApp groups and all sorts that will really help you to kind of get to know people before you actually start. One last slide is there is a case of, are there any questions? I realise you'll be watching this on demand now, so you can contact us either via those channels, or you also will find on our website quite a few different emails. One of those being studyhere@chi.ac.uk. You can email us any questions on that, and we can pass those on to the right departments. And also, if it's maybe more course-related questions, you can also email our admissions team on admissions@chi.ac.uk, and we can pass those on to the relevant departments. Going to finish up there, and I'm going to say thank you very, very much to Steve and Tom for sharing their experiences this afternoon. And hopefully we will see some of you here in September. Thanks very much. Thanks, guys.